Yo, is that Kill Bill inside a Killbox? Killboxes are something you've probably heard of before, but being such a vague and abstract concept, you've likely struggled putting it into your rank games. And this is what this video aims to fix. By the way, I've made a playlist of advanced concept guides, including this video, where the goal is to explain very relevant, high-level ideas in a way that's digestible, applicable, and bingeable to the average gold or plat player. A link will be in the top right, and it'd be great if you shared this around, because it's truly some of the best educational content you'll find. I'd be very comfortable sending every video in this playlist to a top 500 player. So what is a Killbox, and why should you give two fucks about it? Very simply, a Killbox is an area where you intend to engage on the enemy team. Watch this video in the top right to learn more about engaging and exiting. And instead of telling you why you should care about Killboxes, I'll show it throughout. The whole thing about Killboxes is that it's easy to punish the enemy team when they walk through the area, and there's 5 main factors to this. The first and biggest factor is setup. Simply put, is your team actually in position to set up on your Killbox? Or are you trying to overextend way too far beyond your own space? For example, in the grand finals of the recent Flash Ops tournaments, SR Peak Check decides to engage on Oblivion, but everyone is engaging from the same direction, meaning it's very easy to kite and retreat back. I'll make a video on kiting in the near future. From a top-down perspective, their dive essentially looks like this. The pink square is the Killbox, and you can see that they basically have 1 or maybe 2 angles onto it. Instead, they need a pincer, a Reaper teleporting behind, or even set up behind the enemy team before the teamfight even begins to catch Oblivion on their kite back. Instead, Oblivion execute that push-pull idea talked about in my sex video. In other words, SR Peak Check push, Oblivion pull, and then they push back with beat and queen ults. They probably don't need both, but you get the point. So in that instance, it was not easy to punish the enemy team if you were SR Peak Check because you weren't set up for it. But your individual hero picks can also influence whether you're able to punish the enemy team too. This is where you come in and where you can individually make an impact on your hero in your rank games. Going back to Samoa, say if you play Widowmaker and your Killbox was here, closer to their spawn, you would not be able to set up for this because Widow wants long open sightlines. Instead, playing back on point and having this choke be your Killbox would be way better as Widow can actually set up for it due to the long and open sightlines. Before I continue, if you want to rank up fast in Season 8 and hit a new peak for yourself, I strongly recommend you check out my coaching. All the coaching is uploaded on my second channel, so you yourself can see that I'm the real deal. If you're interested, click the top link in the description. So here's another example on Suravasa. So if you're playing like a Mei based comp or a Brawl based comp, your Killbox is mainly going to be in this area here beyond the choke, where your Mei is going to be standing here mainly, and you just get a clean wall, and your Killbox is roughly around that area. If you're playing a dive based comp where you want more angles, this would probably be your best Killbox here, or one of the best Killboxes, where again you've got open space here, multiple different flanks and angles you can take, or you can just go and play on point where you still have that sort of 3 angle setup here. You've got here, here, you can come around here late into the fight too, flank around there, flank around back, and that angle too. And if you're playing a poke based comp where you want long sweeping sight lines, maybe some big open spaces too, this is probably your best Killbox on point, where you can play back here, you can play on the high ground here, and you can even swing around right side. It's a bit of a shorter sight line, but it's still a good rotation to make, and you have that nice Killbox set up on points. The third factor that can affect how easy it is to punish a Killbox is simply whether it's an open space or not. This is an idea that I went into depth on in my webbing video, which, by the way, webbing is a subcategory of Killbox. I'll talk about it at the end, but here's a clip where I specifically talk about open space. This is on Colosseo, on high ground, on defense when they're pushing the bot here, and as you can see, anyone who gets caught in this pink area is dead, right? And anyone who plays in open space here, even though they've got window, just dies. Like, look at this Sojourn, is in the web and just gets shredded. And just look at the Queen, right? Just still half HP, still getting pressured hard. The web here means that our Sojourn gets a railgun shot onto the Lucio there. Like, it's just super tough for them. Anyone in this open space just dies. Really? The fourth factor is mobility. Specifically, the mobility of the enemy team. Now, I thought the days had passed where I'd use Spyro clips, but he's just the GOAT and still was over 2 years ago. Essentially, the idea is that more mobile heroes can take more space because they're often not threatening at range and they always have escape options.
What if this was an Orisa or a Roadhog or a Sigma? What if this was a Zenyatta? Do you think that we would dive here if those are those heroes? It's a trade-off though. They're more threatening, but they're also less able to get out. They have fewer escape options. So once they're this close, they're all in. And that is absolutely tripping your kill box.
And actually, if you're the more mobile team, you can use this to your advantage by baiting the enemy team to engage onto you, then you just exit and leave, and then you push back in. Again, I go over all of this in my push-pull video with the questionable thumbnail. Note how all of these ideas can link together. The last factor I have is danger, more specifically, how dangerous and how much of a threat the enemy team pose. And this is super important because if you have point control and the enemy team aren't doing anything dangerous, why would you ever do anything yourself? I'm actually thinking about making an entire video dedicated to this idea of how doing nothing and AFKing can literally win you games, or prevent more losses realistically. And I know this seems off topic, but it reminds me a lot about a Jinxie clip where he was reviewing Rainbow Six Siege players and their mistakes, and this TikTok showed up with almost 1 million likes. I'll play the bit that's relevant here, but in short, this concept is all about not making plays when you really don't need to.
So why peak this? I wanna well, I probably shouldn't say that. I wanna reach through my monitor and give you a $19 Fortnite card. Why are you peeking an enemy combatant baiting outside with 47 seconds left? If you die right here, your teammate is now stranded in a 1v1 scenario. He can't revive you, he can't save you, he can't get your refrag. This is a stupid fucking play. This is a 50-50 gunfight for an unnecessary kill.
In terms of an Overwatch example, here are 2 good ones from my top 50 Mei player. So here are Mei walls early, and note how the enemy team aren't posing a threat at all. Their queen is literally miles away, and then when the queen actually commits to the shout and closes the distance, i.e. she's now in our kill box, we haven't got the wall. All our Mei needed to do in this situation was just AFK and shoot the queen or Genji from range behind cover. Again, here on first point attack, our Mei walls in a position where the enemy team pose no threat to him at all, and where his own team aren't really set up for the kill box. Again, harking back to that first factor. As a result, he ends up overextending and dying first for it. Bearing in mind, this is the same guy who I was literally coaching yesterday, and he was in the same lobby as Overwatch World Cup winner KSA, recent Overwatch League player Psycho, the best Sigma player in the UK, who you're probably gonna see next year in the World Cup, Tread, and a top Saudi Arabian contenders player, One. I'm shocked he still made these mistakes. And if he's making them, you almost certainly are too. So in summary, the 5 main factors are setup, which is mainly a positional thing where you have angles, heroes, where you're trying to play to their strengths, open space, so the enemy team can't stabilize, mobility, so the enemy team can't escape, and danger, so you don't end up making plays when you really don't need to. Now, what if you're on the receiving end? What if the enemy team can actually punish you? What do you do now? Well, I've already talked about one option, which is to just bait the enemy team to come into you, and that's done by mainly having some form of mobility to always escape if you need to. However, another option is just to rotate away. For example, here in the 2021 Overwatch League Grand Finals, the Dragons have a kill box set up just as the Vayne exit the room, and Vayne decide, instead of walking through it, just to rotate around. Unfortunately, because of how open Ilios Ruins is, and how much high ground there is, the Dragons are still able to adjust and still punish the Vayne as they rotate. This is why having a Mei or Symmetra makes rotating so much easier, because you can either absorb the dive on Mei, or just skip the rotation entirely with your teleports, and then you bypass the enemy team setup. You can even do a rotation bait where you look like you're going one way before going the other. This is most commonly done on Busan Mecha Base, where teams will hide in this middle area, so teams think they're gonna rotate to the other side, but then they double back and go through main. Another option is ultimates. In other words, absorbing and living through the Killbox engage. Again, I talk about absorbing in my anti-dive guide, but using sustain cooldowns like Rally, Transcendence, Make Cryo, and mobility cooldowns like Power Slide, Fade, Brig Bash, Kiriko TP, and Wraith means that you can easily fight back.
Fight back! Fight back!
If we go back to that Ilios fight, if Hawk had just eaten the somewhat telegraphed pulse bomb, Iris rotates and jumps to high ground, and Massa builds beats, all of a sudden, this fight seems a lot more winnable for Atlanta. And just adding that extra bit about high ground, this is so important. If you're playing Echo or Sojourn especially, kiting back to high ground is so important against Divia or rush-based comps when you trigger their kill box. Queen just can't do She has to hit the knife of her life, right? It forces this Lucio to do some weird-ass wall-ride shit to boop you off instead of speeding the queen. It forces the queen to hit a nutty-ass knife. It forces the Genji to dive onto you, right? High ground is just so important. And then Matt power slides in open space with no cover, which is a big mistake. The penultimate thing I want to touch on is webbing, which, as I've already said, is a form of a killbox. I made a whole video dedicated to it, but the short version is that webbing essentially surrounds the entire enemy team and traps them in open space, unable to move in all directions. The last thing I want to touch on is that killboxes aren't fixed. They can shift and change as the fight flows and progresses, and it's up to you to take those angles around that area or killbox as the fight goes on. For example, here in the Flash Ops game, the killbox for X-Oblivion is roughly on the middle left side of points, but as the fight progresses, it becomes the choke, and you see Shockwave take a well-timed angle on that killbox and find 2 trades. Also note the high ground concept mentioned earlier, where Shockwave power slides over the back end of point to avoid the enemy team's killbox. And that's it for the video. Again, check out all the videos mentioned, because all of them can be interconnected together and should be in order to form a holistic understanding of the game. Shout out to my channel members, Slothdust, XBenny, Wix, Broken by 50%, and Susfring, and let me know your thoughts down below. Until next time.